My wife kicked me out of the house after her own sister lied about getting pregnant by me.
My name is Everett Langston.
A year ago, I was a quiet man living a quiet life, no scandal, no enemies, no secrets. I taught history at a local high school in Corning Falls, a town small enough to remember your birthday but big enough to forget your humanity when it was convenient. I married young, a woman named Mallory. She was radiant in a way that made people lean closer just to be noticed. We were steady, if not thrilling. Built on routine, small gestures, shared groceries, and weekend plans that rarely changed.
And I liked it that way. We didn't have children, though we tried.
There was grief in that, silent and unsaid, like the kind of ache that lingers in the room even after you've stopped mentioning it.
But we had love. Or I thought we did.
Mallory's younger sister, Jolene, was the kind of person who made an entrance even when the moment didn't call for it. She had a way of gliding into rooms like she was the main event. I never had much to say to her. She seemed brittle, as if everything you said was being weighed, judged, spun into something else entirely. I treated her kindly because she was family.
Because Mallory asked me to.
She lived close by.
Dropped in often. Too often. Unannounced visits became routine.
She'd sit on our sofa like she belonged there, scrolling her phone, not saying much.
She barely looked at me. That suited me fine.
But I noticed the way she'd linger sometimes, too long. The way her gaze sharpened when Mallory wasn't around.
It wasn't flirtation, it was something else. Resentment, maybe. Envy. It's hard to name something that's never fully revealed itself. It was a Sunday morning when it happened.
I remember it vividly, not because anything extraordinary preceded it, but because of how painfully ordinary it all was.
I was making coffee. Mallory's blend.
2 sugars, no cream. I was humming an old song my father used to play on road trips. The house was filled with golden light, one of those rare mornings where everything feels gently suspended in peace. Then the front door opened.
I didn't flinch. I assumed it was Jolene again, showing up without notice.
I turned, ready to offer a polite greeting. But I froze. Jolene stood beside Mallory, both of them pale in a way that suggested something had already detonated long before I turned around.
Jolene didn't hesitate. Everett got me pregnant, she said. 7 words. 7 cold, weaponized syllables. The air left the room. I don't remember blinking.
My hands stayed around the warm ceramic of the mug. I was still smiling slightly, some leftover reflex from before the world changed.
Mallory didn't ask me anything. She didn't look at me like someone who wanted an answer. She looked at me like someone who had already written the ending and just needed me to play my role. Her hand struck my face with such force, my vision went white. The mug dropped. It shattered on the tile.
The hot coffee splashed across my bare feet, but I didn't react. I looked at her and saw a stranger. She walked away without another word.
No questions. No hesitation.
Her brothers arrived 5 minutes later.
2 of them. I didn't even know they'd been nearby.
They stormed in like the verdict was printed in stone.
Get him out, one said. No one asked if it was true.
They dragged me through my own home, past the hallway where our wedding photos hung, past the lamp I fixed when Mallory accidentally broke it, past the kitchen where I made breakfast every weekend. Outside, in front of our neighbors, they threw me to the ground. Jared, the older brother, hit me once in the gut.
Clean. Deliberate.
Marco held me against the porch post like I might run.
But I didn't fight. Not because I couldn't, but because I was too stunned. Not by the hit. By the betrayal. You can't prepare for betrayal. Not really. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't give you a warning bell.
It comes like glass, quiet, sharp, and already cutting before you feel the pain. As I lay on the lawn, trying to catch my breath, I looked up at Mallory.
She stood in the doorway. Arms crossed. Ring still on her finger. She didn't move. Didn't come closer. Didn't ask if I was okay. She just watched.
Like she was watching something be buried.
I left that day. No suitcase.
Just a canvas bag with 2 shirts, a spare pair of shoes, and the watch Mallory gave me on our 5th anniversary. I scribbled one sentence on the fogged-up bathroom mirror before I walked out.
You never asked.
Then I closed the door behind me and disappeared. When I left Corning Falls, I didn't look back, not once. Not at the street where kids used to wave to me. Not at the porch I built with my own hands. Not even at Mallory, though a part of me kept imagining her silhouette standing in the window as I turned the corner, watching with something like regret. But when I left, the only witness was silence.
I took a bus going west. I didn't care where it was headed. I just needed to be somewhere that wasn't there. Somewhere my name didn't echo off walls like a curse. On that ride, I didn't cry. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just stared out the window and let the world blur. Cities turned to hills.
Hills turned to empty stretches of road. My mind was a hollow chamber where one sentence repeated like a drumbeat.
She didn't even ask.
I got off the bus in a place called Whitlow Bay, a small, coastal town barely mentioned on most maps. It smelled of salt and pine and old wood.
The kind of place that holds its breath more than it speaks. That suited me fine.
I checked into a rundown inn with peeling paint and a kind manager who didn't ask why I had no luggage. I gave my name as Graham, pulling it from a road sign we'd passed earlier.
It didn't matter what they called me now. The man I used to be was gone. That first night, I couldn't sleep.
The mattress was thin, the wind loud, and my ribs still ached from the punch. But none of that was why I couldn't sleep. It was the silence. Because when the world falls away from you, it's not the noise that haunts you, it's the quiet.
It's realizing that no one is coming to correct the lie.
No one is racing after you, desperate to know the truth. I woke early, walked the shoreline, and kept walking.
I didn't think about what came next. I didn't have a plan. I just moved.
Eventually, I found work hauling fishing nets down at the docks. A man named Lau gave me a job after I told him I was just passing through and not picky.
He didn't ask where I came from.
He just tossed me gloves and pointed to the gear that needed cleaning. The work was hard. Salt burned the cuts on my hands.
My back screamed every night.
But pain was a relief. It was real. It was honest. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't being watched like a criminal. In Whitlow Bay, I became invisible, but on my terms.
No one whispered. No one judged.
I was just another drifter with calloused palms and a quiet stare.
I rented a room above the town's only bookstore.
It smelled of old pages and lemon oil. The owner, Mrs. Winslow, gave me a discount when I offered to fix a broken radiator and reorganize the storage closet.
I didn't mind. Helping felt good again. Safe. I didn't speak of the past. Not even to myself. But some nights, I couldn't help it.
I'd sit by the small window, notebook in hand, and write fragments.
Not full entries. Just pieces. She didn't blink. He hit me before I spoke. No one asked if I was okay.
It wasn't for catharsis.
It was for memory.
So I wouldn't rewrite the truth in my head. So I wouldn't forget what silence had cost me.
One evening, Mrs. Winslow's granddaughter, Iris, asked if I knew how to build websites.
She wanted to create one for the shop but didn't know where to start.
I hesitated, then said I'd try.
I borrowed her laptop, watched a few tutorials, and spent the weekend quietly building something simple but elegant. When I showed her, she clapped her hands and called it perfect. Something cracked open in me then, not a wound, but a window.
I realized I still had something to offer.
That my skills, my mind, my attention to detail, those hadn't been erased.
Just my name.
Soon, word spread.
The bakery needed a site.
Then the bait shop. Then the library.
I helped, always under the name Graham.
They paid what they could, sometimes in money, sometimes in coffee, sometimes in gratitude.
And it was enough.
I saved what I earned, bought a second-hand computer, and set up a makeshift workspace in the corner of my room.
A lamp. A fan.
A chipped mug for pens.
It wasn't much. But it was mine.
At night, I'd code quietly while the ocean hummed outside.
I didn't check the news. Didn't call anyone.
I was rebuilding a man no one knew had been torn apart.
In that quiet town, among honest strangers, I started to become someone else. Not to hide. But to heal.
By the time the summer fog rolled into Whitlow Bay, I was no longer Everett Langston, not in name, and not in the hollowed, haunted way I once existed. I had become Graham Kelly to everyone who mattered, which is to say, people who didn't care where I came from. That was the first mercy this town gave me. It let me exist without interrogation. Every morning, I ran along the coast, timing my breath to the crash of the tide. My knees ached from years of neglect, but the rhythm of motion gave my mind something else to hold on to.
I didn't run from anything anymore. I ran to remember I still could.
My workspace above the bookstore grew into something more than just a room. It became a pulse, a point of control in a world that had once spun without my consent. I had 10 steady clients.
Small businesses, mostly. A floral shop. A seafood shack.
A woman who sold hand-knit scarves online.
Each one, a piece of my puzzle clicking quietly into place. No one asked about the bruises I came with. No one questioned the name printed on my invoices. I think they knew not to ask.
People who've been broken recognize the silence in others.
Mrs. Winslow started introducing me to newcomers as our town's tech magician. I never corrected her. I had stopped correcting people the moment I realized I didn't want to be remembered, I wanted to be known. And those are not the same thing. Then came the day everything changed again.
I was sorting receipts for a bakery website when Mrs. Winslow buzzed from downstairs.
"You've got a visitor," she said.
"Says she's a friend."
My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone where I'd gone. Not friends. Not extended family. I didn't leave a trail. I opened the door slowly, already bracing myself. It was Mallory.
She stood in the entryway, drenched from the rain, her hair darker than I remembered, her coat clinging to her frame.
She looked thinner. Tired. Older in a way that wasn't about years.
"Graham," she said, as if trying out the name for weight.
I didn't answer.
"I've been looking for you," she continued, her voice quieter than the storm behind her.
For a long time. Still, I didn't speak. "I know what Jolene said wasn't true," she added. "I have proof."
I exhaled through my nose, turned from the door, and walked back toward my desk.
She didn't follow.
"I'm not here to fix things," she said after a pause.
I needed you to know I was wrong. I was so wrong.
I handed her a flash drive from my drawer, the one I'd kept hidden for over a year.
It held a recording.
A message forwarded to me months after I disappeared.
Jolene's voice, captured in a private conversation she thought would never resurface. She laughed in the recording.
"I told them he did it," she said.
"Because he looked at me like I didn't matter.
So I made him matter. I made him something they'd never forget."
One sentence, drenched in ego and disdain.
I hadn't listened to it in months.
But that moment, hearing Mallory say she believed me now, didn't bring relief. It brought something else. A realization.
She only came because she had nowhere else to go. Her family had fractured. Her mother turned cold. Her brothers were under scrutiny for something unrelated but adjacent: violence, anger issues, the kind of behavior people excused until it couldn't be ignored. She had lost the support system that once made me disposable.
And now she was here, not for justice, but for absolution. "I already knew," I said finally. She blinked. "What?" "I've had that recording for over a year." Her face went slack. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you didn't ask," I said. She swallowed. "I didn't know how." "No," I replied. "You didn't want to know. You wanted the story that made you the hero of your own reaction."
She cried then, not loudly, but steadily. "I'm sorry," she said.
I believed the worst. I didn't even hesitate. I nodded. "I know."
She looked at me as though waiting for something: redemption, maybe.
Closure.
A thread to pull herself out of the guilt.
"I'm not angry anymore," I said. "But I'm not the man you remember."
"That man died on our porch the day you chose a story over a person." She wiped her cheeks, nodded slowly, and said the last words I ever expected to hear.
"I'm proud of the life you built. I hope you let people see it one day." Then she left. No hug. No plea.
Just a woman walking back into the storm she once helped create.
And me?
I sat down at my desk, opened a new browser window, and bought a domain, kellycrafted.com.
Because it was time to stop hiding behind healing. It was time to begin.
After Mallory left, I thought that would be the end of it, the final scene in a long, unraveling play I hadn't auditioned for. I expected her to disappear the way people do when the truth makes them uncomfortable.
But she didn't. She stayed. Not with me. Not even on my side of town.
But she rented a small room from Clara, the same woman whose boats I helped restore down by the South Dock.
Clara never asked what happened between us. She just said, "Seems like she's learning how to keep her head down," and left it there. I never asked Mallory why she stayed. She didn't approach me again. Didn't knock. Didn't linger.
She started working at the community clinic, helping elderly residents with scheduling, forms, blood pressure checks. I heard about it from Iris, Mrs. Winslow's granddaughter.
"She's gentle with the people who shake," Iris said once.
"You can tell she's carrying something."
I didn't respond. Weeks passed. Then months. I'd see her across the farmer's market, carefully picking through apples. Once at the harbor, talking quietly to a child waiting for her father to come in from the tide. She moved like someone who didn't want to disturb the world anymore. At first, I felt a pang every time I saw her. But not because I missed her. It was because I recognized the look in her eyes. It was the same one I wore when I arrived in Whitlow Bay. The look of someone trying to disappear without dying. Then one foggy morning, a story broke online. I was sipping coffee at the cafe, scrolling through a digital ethics forum where I occasionally posted under the name G. Kelly, when I saw it. False accusation dismantles teacher's life, truth surfaces years later. There were no names in the article. No school listed. No towns mentioned. But the timeline was mine. The details were too specific to ignore. A sister-in-law. A fabricated pregnancy. A community that chose judgment over questions. A man who vanished. A recording that turned the tide. At the bottom of the article was a link. Listen, the confession that changed everything. It was the file I'd kept hidden for years. Jolene's voice. Her laughter. Her lie, laid bare. And I hadn't uploaded it. Mallory had. I knew it before I even finished reading the thread. She must have copied it when I handed her the flash drive. It had taken her time, but she had done it. And the internet, as it does, erupted. Some called it fabricated. Some said it was clearly real. Commenters debated anonymity versus exposure. One user wrote, "Stories like this are why good men go quiet." Within hours, more pieces started surfacing. Someone linked a public resignation from a high school coach in a nearby county, Jared. Another user posted screenshots from an old Facebook comment made by someone named Eloise, the same line about wolves in family clothing. They weren't just facing whispers anymore. They were facing the mirror. I didn't say a word. I didn't post. I didn't like anything. I didn't write a follow-up. But I watched it all unfold from the same desk where I'd once cried silently into my keyboard, wondering if anyone would ever believe me again. People began approaching me differently in town. They didn't reference the article directly, but I could tell they knew. A retired fisherman left a paper bag on my doorstep with a note, for someone who stood through the storm. Inside was a handmade compass and a piece of driftwood carved with the word "stay." A teenage boy came into my workshop asking if I could help him build a portfolio website. I agreed. As we finished, he said, "My dad said you're the reason truth matters. Said you didn't burn them back, you just let the light find them." I said nothing. Because it was true. I hadn't destroyed them. I simply stopped hiding from the truth. The morning after the article exploded across every corner of the internet, I expected someone to knock. But no one did. There was no applause. No reporters. No dramatic reunions. And maybe that's why it felt real. For years, I thought closure would come in a loud moment, a court verdict, a confrontation, a shouted apology. But what came instead was silence. Not the painful kind, not the kind you fill with questions and regret. This silence was different. Calmer. Still. Peace doesn't come when the world says, "You were right." It comes when you stop needing the world to say anything at all. That day, I visited the harbor at sunrise. It was a routine now. Coffee in hand, worn notebook in my jacket pocket. I stood by the edge of the pier, watching the gulls trace invisible paths through the fog. And then, for the first time in years, I wept. Not because I was sad. But because I finally knew I could stop holding my breath. Later, a letter arrived. No return address. No handwriting. Just clean, printed words on a single white page. "You could have destroyed us. But you didn't. You let the truth speak without burning everything around it. That strength I can't measure. I'm sorry I didn't see it before." Signed simply, M. I placed the letter in the drawer beside the old flash drive. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. A reminder that restraint is its own kind of justice. Jolene, from what I heard, left the state. Changed her name. Deleted every trace of her online presence. Her company let her go after a board review. The CEO's statement read, "Integrity matters. And that includes off the clock." Jared stepped down from coaching, citing personal reasons. The truth traveled further than I expected. Eloise, Mallory's mother, gave a vague interview to a local paper. She called the incident an unfortunate misjudgment. No apology. Just detachment. It didn't matter. The damage was done. Mallory remained in Whitlow Bay. She kept working at the clinic.
She started organizing monthly community health nights.
I didn't speak to her.
We crossed paths sometimes, at the market, at the dock, in the quiet corners of town.
When we did, we didn't smile. We nodded. Once. That was enough.
Because forgiveness isn't about walking back into the arms of those who failed you.
It's about walking past them without carrying their weight.
I never posted my side of the story. I never chased justice with a torch. Instead, I rebuilt. Today, I own 4 buildings in town. My tech business supports clients from 6 countries.
I sponsor local programs for teens interested in cybersecurity. My name, Everett Langston, is spoken with respect again. Not because I demanded it,
but because I lived like I deserved it. Sometimes people come to me quietly, cautiously, and ask for help.
I help them. Not out of obligation. Not out of pity.
But because I remember what it felt like to be erased. And I vowed never to become the kind of man who turns away from a soul in freefall. A year after the article, I gave a talk at the community college about digital resilience. At the end, a girl, barely 17, asked me how I kept going when no one believed me.
I smiled gently and said, because the truth isn't a flame. It's a seed.
You plant it, walk away, and let time and silence do their work.
One day, people will see the tree. And she nodded, like maybe she understood.
That night, as the harbor lights blinked across the water, I sat alone on my porch, sipping cider, watching the stars.
I wasn't haunted anymore. Not by the slap. Not by the silence. Not even by the lie. Because I had survived them all. I didn't return to who I was. I became who I was meant to be. And this time, I answered only to my own name. Everett Langston. Truth bearer. Peacekeeper. Builder.
Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.